Have you ever wondered how Gautama Buddha, a spiritual teacher from over 2,500 years ago, would respond to the frantic pace and complex challenges of our modern world? From social media overload to climate concerns, our era seems light years away from ancient India. Yet Buddha's core teachings remain surprisingly relevant. If he were alive today, what fresh guidance might he offer about technology, relationships, or personal growth? In this exploration, we'll dive into the principles that shaped his wisdom and envision how he'd adapt them for our time. Technology and mindful use. If Buddha were alive now, he'd likely observe how our constant connectivity can both unite and distract us. In ancient times, he taught the importance of right speech and right action, guidelines that encouraged honesty, kindness, and ethical behavior. Translated to today's environment, this might look like using social media responsibly, being mindful of the words we post, avoiding harmful or divisive content, and ensuring our online presence aligns with compassion rather than aggression. He might also caution against letting devices dominate our time. While smartphones and apps can foster learning and connection, they can easily become tools of compulsive scrolling. According to Buddha's principle of the middle way, avoiding extremes is key. We shouldn't demonize technology, nor should we lose ourselves in it. Instead, a balanced approach would have us set boundaries, like dedicating device-free hours to family or solitude, and use digital tools purposefully. By integrating these teachings into our high-tech world, we can remain centered, alert, and compassionate even when life feels like an endless feed of notifications. Dealing with information overload. One hallmark of modern life is the onslaught of information, news, entertainment, and opinions flooding every corner of our waking hours. If Buddha were here, he'd likely remind us that our minds can easily become restless from too many external inputs. In the Pali Canon, he emphasized mindfulness and concentration, samadhi, as antidotes to mental chaos. Applied today, these teachings encourage us to cultivate periods of intentional calm, say a few minutes of silent meditation, where we can sift through mental clutter. He might also question the assumption that knowing more always equates to being more informed. True understanding, Buddha would suggest, requires discernment. Not all data or news stories are equally important, and chasing every headline can be a source of stress. Instead of skimming countless articles or jumping to comment on every trending topic, he'd likely advocate right effort, investing energy only in pursuits that nurture wisdom, empathy, or practical benefit. By setting digital boundaries and using mindful curation, we keep ourselves from drowning in trivia, preserving mental space for insight and genuine human connection. Consumption and consumerism. Buddha taught that attachment leads to suffering, whether it's craving material things or clinging to ideas. In a consumer-driven age, where advertisements constantly push us to buy and upgrade, he might see a heightened version of the same phenomenon he witnessed in wealthy ancient courts. Advertisers promise happiness through possessions, yet the satisfaction from new gadgets or clothes quickly fades, leaving us wanting more. For a modern Buddha, the remedy would still be detachment. Not that he'd condemn owning things, but he'd caution against letting possessions own us. Setting mindful limits, buying only what we genuinely need, pausing to reflect before each purchase, mirrors the monastic commitment to living simply. Monks often have few personal items, not from lack of choice, but from recognition that too many belongings weigh the mind down. Translating this to modern life, we can practice minimalism or mindful spending, ensuring our resources go toward what truly enriches our lives. It's a stance that relieves financial stress and fosters gratitude for what we already have, undermining the endless cycle of want and dissatisfaction. Mental health and the modern stresses. Contemporary challenges, workplace burnout, anxiety disorders, and depression reflect an epidemic of mental strain. Gautama Buddha's Four Noble Truths addressed suffering's root causes, highlighting craving and ignorance as key drivers. In today's context, craving could be the relentless pursuit of achievement or social approval, and ignorance could manifest as denial of our emotional needs. If Buddha were among us, he might champion open conversations about mental health, urging us to treat emotional distress as seriously as physical illness. He'd possibly expand on his teachings about right mindfulness and right concentration, advocating meditation not just for spiritual insight, but also for stress management and emotional resilience. In a modern clinical sense, mindfulness-based therapies echo these ancient practices, helping people cope with anxiety or negative thought patterns. He'd also emphasize self-compassion, seeing oneself as deserving of empathy and care, just as we'd offer a loved one. By merging these Buddhist frameworks with modern psychology, we'd gain holistic strategies that feed both inner peace and outer balance, sustainability and interconnectedness. Buddha observed that all life forms exist in a web of interdependence. Today, issues like climate change, pollution, and resource depletion underscore that principle on a global scale. If he were present now, Buddha would likely point out that harming the environment directly harms us, since we're part of that same ecological tapestry. He taught compassion not only for people but for all sentient beings. Applied to modern sustainability concerns, that compassion would guide us toward eco-friendly choices, reducing waste, limiting carbon footprints, and protecting habitats. For Buddha, caring for the earth wouldn't be an abstract moral duty. It'd be a logical extension of understanding that we rely on the same air, water, and soil as every other living creature. He'd remind us that small daily decisions, bringing reusable bags, cutting back on single-use plastics, or choosing public transport, collectively shape the world's future. This mindfulness in consumption and disposal aligns with right action, ensuring that our lifestyles promote harmony rather than exploitation. Relationships in a digital era. If Buddha were alive now, he'd witness relationships formed and maintained across screens, through texts, video calls, and social networks. While technology can bridge distances, it can also deepen misunderstandings or cultivate superficial bonds. Buddha's emphasis on genuine connection and right speech calls us to communicate with honesty, kindness, and attentiveness, whether online or offline. He'd also address the subtle loneliness that can arise from digital reliance. Monks, after all, balance communal living with solitude. Modern humans might do well to replicate that approach, finding community where empathy and real conversation flourish, but also carving out alone time to reflect and recharge. The goal isn't to abandon tech-driven communication, but to ensure it doesn't replace heartfelt interactions. By combining ancient wisdom on compassion and sincerity with new digital platforms, we could nurture relationships that are simultaneously global in reach and deeply personal. The value of slowing down. Speed seems to define modernity. Faster internet, quicker results, instant gratification. Buddha, in contrast, taught a path of mindful pacing. Were he in today's world, he'd likely see how rushing leads to mistakes, burnout, and shallow experiences. Instead, he'd encourage us to slow down, making our morning coffee with deliberate presence, savoring each sip, or walking without earphones so we can feel the ground beneath us. Monks often follow structured routines, balancing work, study, meditation, and rest. This harmony fosters steady energy rather than frantic peaks and crashes. For a modern audience, it might mean scheduling purposeful breaks, learning to say no to unnecessary tasks, and respecting one's mental bandwidth. Slowing down isn't laziness. It's the recognition that a calmer, more measured approach can yield better outcomes. Reflecting on the middle way, we see that neither racing through life nor becoming idle supports true well-being. The middle ground, mindful action, can transform daily tasks into meaningful rituals that feed the soul rather than deplete it. An updated path to awakening. Buddha's original Eightfold Path, emphasizing right view, intention, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration, remains strikingly adaptable to modern challenges. If he were alive today, he might update certain terms or examples to address virtual interactions, psychological stress, and global concerns, yet the essence would remain the same: live ethically, cultivate wisdom, and practice mindfulness. Just as Buddha offered a practical guide for ancient seekers, he'd likely craft a similarly grounded plan for us. Guidelines for ethical social media usage, approaches to maintaining mental health in a workaholic culture, tips on balancing digital convenience with environmental stewardship. All these would revolve around the same central insight, that understanding the mind and nurturing compassion lead to genuine freedom from suffering. Adopting this updated path doesn't mean discarding technology or modern comforts. It means using them wisely, never forgetting their tools rather than ultimate sources of fulfillment. With each thoughtful choice, whether it's turning off notifications during family time or consciously limiting consumer habits, we advance along a path that's as relevant now as it was 2,500 years ago. While the world has transformed since Buddha's era, his core teachings endure because they address the human mind itself, a realm that hasn't changed nearly as much. If he walked among us today, he'd likely adapt his message to our digital, fast-paced lives, yet still underscore the same timeless truths: mindfulness, compassion, ethical living, and the pursuit of deeper understanding. Which modern issue do you think Buddha would tackle first? Let us know in the comments. And if this resonates, like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Monk Mindset, for more profound insights. May your journey be wise and compassionate, no matter the century.